To do well on any test, there's really three things you need. And this applies not just for the SAT, but it can apply for any other standardized test. It can be for the ACT, it can be for the AP exams, or even a test that you take in school. But there's three things you generally need to do well on the test. Item number one, and most importantly, is to know the concepts. If you don't know the concepts that are going to be tested on the test, there's not really much you can do in terms of studying. So the first thing we're going to focus on is helping you understand the concepts. So we're going to cover everything super simple, like subject-verb agreement and like your basic triangle inequality and your basic Pythagorean theorem. And we're also going to go through some of the more complex topics like your misplaced modifiers, parallel structure in writing sentences, trigonometric identities for math. So we'll cover the entire gamut of concepts that are going to be covered on the exam. So it's very important that you understand these concepts. If you don't understand these concepts, you want to make sure that you brush your skills up on the specific concepts that you're having trouble with. So if you know you have trouble with trig identities, you definitely want to make sure you study for trig identities, not just within the context of the standardized test that you're taking or the SAT, but just in general, because it'll help you further your knowledge on those topics, and it'll help you perform better on the exam as well. So that's item number one. Item number two is strategy. So a lot of students that actually do really well in school or do really well in their math and reading classes, they don't perform as well on the SAT because they get kind of stumped by the types of questions that show up on the exam. And so this is where strategies come in. There's no magic bullet here. Strategies just involve understanding how the questions are going to be presented to you. So you should know how to pace yourself better on the exam. You should understand the order of difficulty of questions, or if there is one, you should understand the different types of questions that are going to show up on the exam, understanding what the question is asking of you and what the test makers expect of you when it comes to answering the question. Choosing the best answer versus just a right answer. It comes into play. So we're going to focus on a lot of different strategies to pace yourselves better, to help you eliminate wrong answer choices, to help you tackle different types of questions as they come up, and understanding when to use substitution or plug and chug or elimination. Just understanding the strategies and the way in which the exam is going to test you helps you understand or helps you perform much better on the exam. And of course, you always want to make sure that these strategies that you are employing are specific to this exam. And this is true for any exam. The pacing that you use on the SAT is not valid for any other exam, especially the ACT, because that's a completely different test. So you want to make sure you are focusing your strategies specifically for the test that you are working on. In this case, it's the SAT. And finally, building confidence and familiarity with the test. So a lot of times students know the concepts really well, and they even go through and review all the strategies. However, on the day of the exam, they get anxious, they get nervous, they feel like they're under pressure to perform really well, and a lot of times that can actually reduce your score because you're so anxious and nervous that you just keep thinking about that, and you just keep thinking about is this going to be a good score, is it a bad score, and you start second guessing yourself. So building confidence is going to come from reviewing the concepts and then understanding how those concepts are going to be tested on the exam. So we're going to build confidence in this course a lot, doing lots of practice problems on official tests, doing lots of homework problems, doing lots of problems in class together. I'll go through a lot of them with you. I'll show you my thought process and how you should be thinking about these questions. So that's going to build a lot of confidence. And then familiarity is also important. Throughout this course, we're going to take multiple diagnostics. You should have already taken a diagnostic as a pre-test or as a baseline score. If you haven't, you should do that before you move on in this course because you really want to understand exactly where you're performing right now without any kind of preparation. So you have a baseline score established at least. And so that familiarity is going to come with taking multiple diagnostics as we go through the course. You'll take several different tests. Sometimes I'll assign one as we're going through the course. Other times they're going to be prescribed to you, but you'll figure out what your schedule looks like in terms of preparing for preparing for the exam. What you want to make sure of is every time you take a practice test, you take a full-length practice test. So don't take just the reading portion or just the writing portion or just the math portion. You want to put yourself in a position that you're going to be in during the actual exam. A lot of times students take just the math portion if they want to focus on the math, but then when they go take the actual test, it doesn't translate over. And that's because the math portion, for example, is on the second half of the test. We'll cover that in a later video as well. But the math portion is on the second half of the test, which means you've already gone through about an hour and a half of reading and writing before you get to math. So you may be tired, you may be hungry, you may be sleepy, you may have to use the bathroom. There's a number of factors that come into play when you take a full-length test. Those factors are not into play when you are just taking the math portion of the exam. So you're fresh, you're ready to go, it's the first thing you're doing, so you don't get an accurate idea of where you're scoring. So you want to build familiarity with the test so you understand how your mind and body react to the exam. Understanding when you get hungry, when you get sleepy, when you get lethargic, when you start feeling like, oh man, I don't want to do this. It's very important so that you can come up with methods to kind of to mitigate those things or to deal with them as they come up. So we're going to talk a lot about that. One thing to keep in mind is that we're only going to focus on the SAT this time in this series of videos. So we're only going to focus on what the exam is going to ask you to do. So we're not, a lot of times you'll come across problems that you will be able to solve, especially on math, using calculus. We're not going to focus on that. I'm not going to show you any advanced methods or any methods that the SAT would not expect you to know or learn. And we're going to monitor your progress. And this is how you improve your score on any test. We're just going to keep taking practice tests. We're going to keep reviewing the concepts. I'll help you understand exactly how those things are going to come up on the exam. And then you'll implement those on the practice and the review of the tests themselves. So hopefully this will be a good overview for you for all the concepts, all the strategies, and you'll have everything you need to build a lot of confidence and be confident on the day of the exam, and extremely familiar with the test so that you get the maximum score you possibly can.